But for me, the game is more interesting when you're playful. And I'm not saying like be playful to the point where like you're not being serious. I'm saying be technical, technical tough. Technical tough
Right.
is way more fun than tough. Tough, you can't tap me. Tough, we're going for it. Tough, be technical tough. You get a lot more done,
Mm.
you know? And I think
Yeah.
knowing when to give a position, like stop yourself, have the discipline. Man, I'm about to use a bunch of power here. Let me just let this happen. Let me let this person pass. Now I get to work my
Hmm.
defense. Let me work my ideas here.
Welcome to Forever White Belt, you guys. Today's guest is Steve Hordinski. Steve is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and the founder of Katharo Training Center in Littleton, Colorado. He's been involved in martial arts for decades, starting in striking arts before eventually finding his way into Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Before becoming a full-time coach, Steve served as a deep sea diver in the U.S. Navy, doing underwater recovery and salvage work, an experience that shaped a lot of how he thinks about discipline, pressure, and brotherhood. He later trained under the Gracie family, including time in Hawaii with Relson Gracie. And over the years, he's developed his own approach to jiu-jitsu that emphasizes efficiency, self-defense, and longevity on the mat. Steve has taught seminars around the country and continues to share his philosophy of practical jiu-jitsu through his academy and instructionals. Steve, welcome to Forever White Belt, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.
So, Steve, one of the things in terms of logistics of the black belt, I've seen various things about the degrees, third degree, fourth degree. Where are we on that?
Fourth degree for me. I'm under Master Kaiki now, and he's on top of things. So fourth degree, it's time and rate after that. You know, you've been doing it for a long time, and as long as you stick with it, you're teaching, you're training. Yeah, it's just time and rate is what I call that. That's a Navy term.
Let's get right into jujitsu. I'd love to talk about this. You've been around jujitsu, as we sort of alluded to, for a while, right? And when you look at the modern jujitsu world today, what feels different from the jujitsu you came up in?
Well, that's an easy one because it's kind of one of my pet peeves is that people forget that the art was designed for combat, fighting. And so when you take the street effectiveness or the street application of it, the street effectiveness out of it, what you're left with is just a sport, a game. And you can get away with a lot more when you're not taking punches to the face. But when you start getting into that, where someone's hitting you or trying to stand up and they don't want to play jujitsu. They don't have an agreement to do jujitsu. It changes. So I would say that that's probably if everyone added that element back into their jujitsu, things would improve.
What's something most people in modern jujitsu believe that you think is completely wrong, even though you kind of touched on one of the things?
Well, not everybody's teaching self defense. I see a lot of schools that teach purely sport have no awareness on application of self defense, the Gracie self defense program, or any tactical mindset, and they think that they're probably in good nature. They're offering that because that's what they were told. But when I see it, it's like they're not doing it, you know. And so, not all jujitsu is self defense effective, you know? If you're not starting standing, if you're not learning, how to deal with basic attacks, I mean, are you really trained in self-defense? So can you really market that? You can. There's nobody stopping you, but as they say, when push comes to shove, does it work? Does it work when someone wants to hurt you?
Doesn't it seem kind of like sort of the comparison that I think of is like judo, right? Where judo used to be, seems like a much more aggressive thing, and now it's been, some people would say, neutered a bit by the rules or the limitations of the Olympics, etc. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. I agree with that. That's why I think that, jujitsu being out of the Olympics is a good thing. I don't think it should be in the Olympics because I think same thing that happened in judo happened to jujitsu, which has already kind of happened. I mean, nothing against, I think the IBJJF has done a really great job at promoting jujitsu, but I think they should look at their rules a little bit, and I think that, awarding people for, stalling and holding position. I mean, if we're not advancing, what is the objective here? You're trying to, submit someone. I think if they're not actively trying to pursue that, then it's kind of boring to me. And the point fighting, points are important. I think they should be designed to award a superior position, which to me, top position is always going to be a superior position. and advancing and moving forward. Because let's face it, if we're talking about what the tournament aspect was applied for in jiu-jitsu, to my understanding, it was to help people that weren't going to get into the MMA or get into the fighting or Vale Tudo to have a realistic way to prepare themselves for self-defense by having taking out the striking element, but having someone come at you with a higher level of aggression to prepare you for an aggressive person in the street. I think that that was the initial idea of what the tournaments were designed to. And then, of course, you get into the winning, the championships, the medals, and things like that. People are going to want to get those because there's prestige there, and naturally the rules start to change. Hey, we've got to make this more efficient. We've got to make this, we have a limited time. These people can't be doing fights that are no time limit,
Mm.
which was very, very much kind of like the Gracie thing back then. It was like, we don't need time limits. We can fight as long as it takes, which I like, but that doesn't work in a tournament setting. So I understand the progression of everything, and also the good and the bad. So like for me, I'm a fan of the IBJJF, but I don't subscribe to everything that they do. I don't like the belt system, and I definitely don't like the emphasis on points. I like ADCC, what they've done, how they've kind of made it to where push that aggression, push that, try to get the finishes. So I'm very much into that. I like that. I like what Eddie Bravo's done with the open hand strikes with his tournaments, and
Mhm.
I like what CGI was. And we'll see what the UFC does, and that's pretty neat. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have competition, but I just think don't forget to govern yourself on that central path of, let's not forget what this was designed for. You could
Mm.
put everything in order. You could put your strength on one's, you have, or let's say leverage, strength, timing, speed, natural body movements, flexibility. We can go between those points, but what governs that? And to me, I draw a line right down the middle: street effectiveness. If you stay close to that heartbeat, or to that straight line, keep your heartbeat there with your jujitsu. Move into the sport a little bit. Move back to the self defense. Keep going around that idea. I think you'll have a better jujitsu, and I would feel more confident as an instructor if I would think that most instructors would feel more confident saying that actually we're preparing our students to prepare themselves in the event that they have to defend themselves. And so I don't want to put my name on anything I can't get behind. So I have to govern it that way.
Yeah, it seems like the jiu-jitsu has split into various different forks. Whether it's the entertainment slash money factor, the casual sport local tournament thing, which probably is a vast majority. And you're right. I haven't heard much about like the self-defense jujitsu stuff, which seems to have been, I wouldn't say minimized, but definitely I just don't hear about it very much, right? Because I don't think there is an entertainment factor to it whatsoever. It's not like
Mhm.
promoted or televised, obviously. But I do still talk to academy owners where that is their emphasis and product, and it's still out there, which is encouraging to hear still. But yeah, I think the loudest voice tends to be the entertainers and the big money makers in sport jujitsu, if you will, especially nogi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And in Instagram too, like there's a lot of people that are building businesses and trying to do stuff online. And I
Hmm.
think that's great. I'm all about it, but become an expert in something first before you start putting out a bunch of ideas, or not, it's whatever. I can only be accountable for who I am in this space, in the jujitsu space, and I will be a person that kind of like the old guard. I'm going to stay true to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu principles. I'm also going to stay current and modern on what's happening with the sports scene. I'm very adept in the no-gi game with the leg locks and everything. I do a lot of modern stuff, but I don't forget where I came from. I don't forget that
Hmm.
at any moment that I can turn it on and I can use this to be as violent as I need to be in a situation. You know what I mean? Like I have confidence walk in there. I'm not going to worry about, someone whooping my ass,
Hmm.
I feel pretty confident to where that's going to be a hard thing to do.
Do you remember a moment, and I'm sure you got a training moment, perhaps with like a mentor that completely reorientated your game?
Oh yeah. What Master Kaiki did. I had already come from that system, with Helson. And just for example, just like a basic pass, that Helson would show one way to do it, and then Kaiki would come in and show another way, and I'd be like, interesting. And of course, I would always ask questions. Hey, why are you doing this versus that? Because Helson showed this, and you're doing this, and I want to understand it. And then I'd be like, whoa, that's way different. Like this hook pass. Helson would show behind and then hook the leg, and then Kaiki would show in and hook the leg and pull up on the leg. And by doing that hook pass and pulling up on the leg, takes the hip off the ground. And it made it much easier to do that, old school Gracie Jiu-Jitsu pass that sometimes throws your ass into a triangle. But when he did it, I was like, I can't move. This is great. I said to him, well, Helson teaches this. And then he says to me, Master Kaiki says, well, Hickson and I do it this way. I was like, enough said. Enough said. So yeah, Master Kaiki, he has a really awesome way of teaching. No matter what I'm doing, if I have something I'm working on, he'll say, Steve, let me see that. And he'll let me do it. He'll say, oh, that's pretty good, pretty good. Then the next time he'll shut it down. And you're like, I can't make anything work. And then he'll let you be in that moment for a little bit. And then he'll say, I think maybe try this. And then you're like, okay, thank you.
Wow.
He's done that. There's a few guys. Javier Vasquez, definitely, because the way he thinks about jujitsu it's very much up my alley. Him and I have been training together close to 15 years. We're always talking about like jujitsu and ideas, and we learn a lot from our conversations. It's like he's teaching me stuff when we're on a call, and I'm asking questions. We're exploring things together, so it's been pretty awesome. Charles Harring's another one that I really enjoy his take on jujitsu, and he's more modern. He does a lot of work with the Globetrotters, and I like that because they have. I forget who the guy is, but Britt, he's the guy that's over in Europe. That's kind of a really,
Preet Mickelson? Yeah.
yeah, Preet, yeah. I have seen some of his stuff, and I'm like, oh, I get that. That makes sense. I do something like that, and so I know that like Charles Harriet, Chris Paines is another one that's been to my school. Those guys
Hmm.
bring that element to me. So yeah, I would say that there's a plethora of people that have influenced my game. Salo Sanji, Cameron Shane. There's a lot, and that's what I would say is like I just take the best of what I see from everyone, and then I start meshing it into my own ideas with how it fits into my jujitsu practice and the things I'm trying to achieve.
You've talked about like efficiency and control in the past. And when did you stop trying to like win every exchange and start trying to understand jujitsu more deeply?
Well, I was already a black belt, and I was my first academy, and I was still pretty young, but I wasn't in my 20s young, competitor young. Because when I was a competitor, I was really strong. I mean, like me getting up on a bench press, I could throw up 365, bench press. I was never on gear. I was in the Navy. I just lifted weights my whole life. And then I was always into martial arts. And so I got really good with deadlifts. I could deadlift like close to 600 pounds or something like that. I would do
Jeez.
these powerlifting competitions. And then I got into jujitsu. And so, I was strong all through that. And I think that was good for my jujitsu, but it also slowed me down a little bit because I didn't have to be as technical being strong like that. I could just be corrected movement and powerful and explosive and athletic. When I got older, in my early 30s, I already had sustained one major injury, which I ruptured my bicep and had to get it reattached. And that was my first like experience of like, okay, I can't do jujitsu like I used to. I have to change some things. I've got to look at how I'm approaching this. And then I had my friend Halleck Gracie came out, and he taught a seminar. And we became. I mean, I'd seen these kids when they were young. When I would stop in with Helson at the academy, so like I've been following them for a while, all the brothers. Yeah, he happened to be out in Colorado. He had a really awesome detail around trap roll escape for our mount that to this day, I've never seen anything better. And we were training, and it was hard to pass his guard, and he passed my guard too. So we did some guard passing. But here's the difference: when I got to a good spot on him, it didn't matter because he still could fight. He could see he had better defense than me. And then when he
Mm.
got to me, I was like, wow. all right, I got to work on this. My guard is getting passed and I got some holes in my game. And we talked about it and I immediately went to work on that. And then about that time is when I got linked up with Javi and we started really just diving deep into defense together because I came to the realization that like I am going to continue to lose my athleticism, but I refuse to suck at jujitsu.
You're
I
right.
like, I, so I actually just, I started looking at everything different. And I remember one day I was on the mat and I was like, why am I working so hard to achieve these positions? I had an idea. It popped in my head. And I said, fortified movement, triangulate your position, be a structure that they can't move. They can only move around. So make people move around your structure. And when I started like making my postures strong, my grips strong, and I said, you can't move me. I am unmovable. And if I move, it's fortified because I'm always going to move with these 3 points of good contact. 2 points with the mat, maybe one to the person and then anchors. I was like, I'm going to make sure that I get these grips good before I move. And when I got that idea of triangulate your position, fortified movement, and be a structure nobody could fuck with, jiu-jitsu started getting a little bit easier.
I love that you mention all this. One of which touches something I was talking to some white belts the other day was posture, right? And when people think of posture, they always think of just the standing up. Hey, I'm standing up straight posture. But then I had to show them posture is when you're like flat on top and mount as well, right? Posture is when you're on your back and the bottom as well too, right? Posture is
Yeah,
is everywhere.
absolutely. I agree with that. I call them, I try to find postures that fit into this category, defensive and offensive.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, wherever I'm at. So for me, it's all about the grips. With injuries, I found out real early that if I was very good with my hand, I could manage a guy grappling me by just grabbing his wrist, blocking things, deflecting things. And so it took me back to a lesson I had with Grandmaster Elio Gracie when he was alive in Brazil, when I was out there in like 2000. I trained with him at 86 years old, and I was confused because he let me get to side control. He let me be in the mounts. He let me do a knee on belly, all of it. He didn't try to fight any of it. He let me get one collar grip, one grip. But if I tried to get a second grip, that would never happen. And it's not like he grabbed it. He just would block it, hit it, move it, move it, move it, move it, like playing catch, right? And it
Hmm.
was pretty frustrating. So I started moving really fast. I started doing, spazzy blue belt stuff. I was a brand new blue
Yeah.
belt.
Yeah.
So yeah. So like, of course, Elio Gracie's 86, so he says something to Relson in Portuguese, basically saying, "Hey, you're strong, you're young. If you use those attributes, you'll beat me." This is Grandmaster. He's saying, "You'll beat me because I'm an old man. But if you try to match me technique for technique, you'll never beat me." And that was an interesting moment. And even to this day, that lesson has taught me so much. Like I can still pull on that lesson. And the grip fighting was the biggest thing that I noticed with him. It's like I couldn't get a second grip. So when I experienced my injury, I was having to do that. And that's when I started really digging deep into it. And I said, all right, no grip, no fight. That was something that started popping in my head. No grip, no fight. Be on top of the grips, right? I was like, be on top of the grips. And then I started doing content. So I was like, you know what? Let me categorize my shit, like let me start to, actually understand my systems. So that's when I came up with the three concepts that I use that apply everywhere for me, which allows you to have, if you have a good foundation, meaning like maybe you got the baby bridge going, maybe you're like slightly here, maybe having your head in the right position, shoulder, whatever, and you get there, and then
Hmm.
you go into to make it offensive, even though you're in a defensive position, is these concept of
Hmm.
intercepting grips. If you see it, you could grab it, you can block it, deflect it, or you can register it with your head or with your eyes. Don't let any grip go
Hmm.
unchecked. Make sure you check every grip. Make sure you know. And that was the biggest one right there. And then occupying ground. Hold the thing, push it into their body, give it back to them, occupy that space, push them out of space that they thought they wanted to be in. When they start retreating, then you make your move, right? And then, of
Hmm.
course, because I started doing that, people started getting pretty wild with me. Then it became counter grip fighting. And that's when I started going into the elbows. So I would go behind and use these false hooks on their elbows. So they wouldn't be so
Mhm.
panicked, because when I grabbed people's wrists, they would flip out. But when I grabbed their
Mhm.
elbows to get to their wrists, and I started using a lot of Marcelo drags, then it changed the game. So I started applying this everywhere. And then it wasn't until meeting my friend Matt, he's a Navy SEAL team guy. He told me one day, gave me a challenge coin, and it said 3 foot world. And he told me a story about it, and I was like, that applies to jujitsu. So that was the additional piece, or the piece that I was looking for to kind of bring all together. Your 3 foot world. Manage your 3 foot world, right? Intercept the grips, occupy the space, and counter grip fight. You need to fight to be in that space. And it doesn't matter if I'm in your close guard, I'm fighting to be in your close guard effectively, with those ideas of fortified movement, being a structure that people can't shake. And then, then you add the components of connection, balance, and stability. And then that's pretty much understanding the vital points that I'm protecting, all the different corners, all the different things that I manage. Jiu-jitsu became easy for me to understand and learn from and teach myself. And then I started seeing my own way. And it was because of countless people that I've trained with, black belts I've learned with or have learned from, seminars I've attended. I mean, I've been in the game for 29 years, and I'm still just as much. It's like I'm a freaking white belt still. Like, I love it. Like, I love to learn. I love to study. I love finding new angles, new ideas, simple shit that just like, what? Where's this been? I've been looking at this thing for 20 some years and I didn't see that till now. What the hell?
What do young grapplers misunderstand about toughness?
Ooh, man. I think the first thing is they don't know, they don't think they're gonna tap. Like, when they first start out, it's like, "No, I'm gonna prove myself. I'm gonna prove myself." I think toughness is one thing, but ego toughness is another thing. Ego toughness gets you fucked up, gets you hurt. And toughness, I think that toughness should be built, it's built daily on the mat. Every time you're on the mat, you're building toughness. Because I think when you first started, your neck was probably sensitive. If you did a day of chokes, right? You probably had like a sensitive neck, and you get in the shower, you're like, oh shit, that's hot. That doesn't feel good. And then now, if someone could wrench on my neck, whatever, I got jujitsu neck. It don't matter. Like, I'm used to it. Your whole body will get tougher when someone's trying to crush you daily, right? And if you're putting in that time, you're developing this mental toughness as well. Because I mean, think about it. If we've been training, you've been underneath that guy that is just like, you're in a big space, but all you're thinking about is this much room that you have to breathe and suffocate in. And you're like, oh, don't panic, don't panic, don't panic. Breathe, breathe. All right, move a little bit, find a little wiggle room. Like, we've all been there. And if you've panic tapped, you know what I'm talking about. That's a terrible place to be. That's a terrible place to be.
I like that you touched on it. Like you mentioned, the tapping thing. I'm just wondering, like, what's the difference between being like mentally tough versus like just being stubborn?
There's nothing on the line. When there's nothing on the line, why are you doing that? Like, if you want to, if you like, what I'll tell people is like, if you're here to win against your training partners, go out and win a world title. Go out and be a UFC champion. Then go do it there. Here, you learn. You learn to be a martial artist, be a partner everybody can train with. I always tell people, man, like, get to the point where you can be at their level, slightly below or slightly above. And if someone starts becoming an asshole or becomes a problem, take it where you need to take it. But when I roll with people, I don't ever turn it on unless they're giving those kind of vibes that's what they need right then and there. Whether they're getting ready
Mm,
for competition, or they just need to know that either one, why they're still training with me, or they need to, they want to test themselves because they heard something. I will deliver on all of those as long as I can breathe. I'll try. I try to stay pretty fit and pretty in shape for the reason, because I don't want to be an example of a bad leader, in my opinion. I don't want to learn from someone
mhm,
that's not in shape, that's not taking care of themselves, that's not actually living the lifestyle, that
mhm.
talks about it. I'd never be that kind of instructor. So I try to give people what they need, And I can train with anyone. I could train with from the oldest, my dad who's 75. I could train with him to the youngest. I have 4.5-year-olds. I can roll with everybody, dynamic, fluid, verted, flip, and not and be light, or I can be a monster. I can be heavy. I can be a smasher, if I have to. But for me, the game is more interesting when you're playful. And I'm not saying like be playful to the point where like you're not being serious. I'm saying be technical, technical tough. Technical tough is way more fun than tough. Tough, you can't tap me. Tough, we're going for it. Tough, be technical tough. You get a lot more done. And I think knowing when to give a position, like stop yourself, have the discipline. Man, I'm about to use a bunch of power here. Let me just let this happen. Let me let this person pass. Now I get to work my defense. Let me work my ideas here. I have one student of mine, Noah. He's been with me since he was a kid. This kid, he started small. He's a man now. Like he is 230 pounds of pure technique and athleticism and agility. And he's technical, so technical, but he can be fluid. He can roll with anybody. But man, I put him in side control. So what I do the other day, I was like, no, I don't want to play you in my guard. Let me start side control bottom. Right. And I'm like, because I wanted to train with him, but I figured, hey, let me put one of my best guys in the best position and see if my shit works. And it goes back to the principles again, hand fighting, intercepting grips, occupying ground, counter grip fighting, make your move. Or they make a move because they get frustrated.
Yeah, that is true. How do you know when a training partner is making you better versus just, increasing your odds of getting hurt?
Yeah, if they're uncontrolled if they're just moving with everything, uncontrolled weight, throwing their weight around, just like spazzy and just diving into stuff, I don't mess with people like that. Like I look at how people train, and I look at what is their intention here. Ask yourself, what's their intention? Why is this person trying to prove something? You could see it, like the one thing about being teachers and being people on the mat and instructors, and I know you've been training for a long time too. You can see what people are in there for. Some people are there for the community. Some people are there for like self defense. Some people are there to be good. Some people are there to prove to themselves that they have some kind of worth because they never had it. Those guys are the ones that I want to lock into early on and just tell them, hey, this is going to be a process. But at the end of it, if you follow my steps, you take your time and you leave your ego at the door, you're going to become the person you want to become.
You said people can say no to bad training partners. Why do so many people struggle to do that?
Ego. They don't want to be the bitch. They don't want to be labeled as a like they're pussing out. Like they're like no, nobody wants to be labeled as Dodger because back in the day it was like that too. Like the mats I grew up on. Like you got to think old school. Back in the day, what do we do? We just fucked each other up. You didn't say no usually. Like if someone asked you to train, especially if a higher belt asked you to train, you said okay. Like I didn't say no. I never said no when I was coming up. I was like, no, okay, yeah, I would, or I was, but I also wanted it too. I was like, man, I want to train with the best guys. So I would train with all my world champion trainer partners. Fredson, I trained with him a bunch. I trained with Daniel Marias a bunch. We always had like Salo coming out, Sanji, come out. I mean, anytime someone was good, as Mario Sperry, Paige Apano, Clever Lucen, anytime those guys came to Hawaii, I mean, I wanted to roll with them. I wanted to get smashed by them. I wanted to be the guy to experience because I knew feeling what they were going to do to me. And granted, I was probably that guy that they didn't like sometimes too, because I'm sure I got fucked up pretty good too. But I wanted it, because it was
Yeah.
for me. It's like I needed to experience because I want to know what you can't see, what you can only feel. So I wanted to get beat up. And, I'm glad I did because now I understand, the ideas of pressure. I understand the ideas of overwhelming force, always be attacking, always, all these things that like Helson would say, bombard them. You never give a guy a break. I mean, that becomes really important. All these lessons become really important when you're training on a hard mat because the failing to drill, failing to apply these lessons usually meant for like you were going to suffer. And it was good. You would get better. If you suffered enough, you would learn how to not suffer. You'd be like, I can't let this dude pass my guard. So I have to fight here because they do this. And this person I got to do this with. And this guy, man, don't let this person get here. So I was very fortunate to have all those kind of people around me.
I'm curious with you, like what habits help someone still train well into their 40s and 50s, 60s and beyond? You mentioned your dad, you know.
What habits? And I think you have to change your whole lifestyle. It's a lifestyle change. I think at that point, like for someone who's starting, and I'm just putting myself in those shoes. If I was an older athlete or an older person and I said, you know what, I want to get back to what I was, or someone who had never had been athletic, I wanted to do something, I'm there for a different reason. Whether it's my health, whether it's like I've been realized that, hey, I've been, doing stuff for everybody else and I've never done anything for myself. And this is what I want to do. Or like maybe they feel like, I don't feel like a man. I want to be around an environment that allows me to like express that, energy to battle, to fight, to get tougher, like if you're coming in that way and then as soon as you experience and you're a smoker or drinker or whatever, you're not gonna last. It's gonna become evident because your first reality check when you start training is that this shit sucks. This is hard.
Yeah.
Everything you thought you might be able to do in a fight as a man just went out the door when some 14-year-old kid just whooped your ass, or one of the girls
Yeah.
just choked you out, I mean, it's like I mean, if you take someone to that level of like humble and they're willing to sit with that and say, you know what, if they could do that, imagine what I can do if I lock in on this. Imagine what I do if I stop smoking, stop drinking, start going to the gym, start working out. I've seen guys change their whole look, their whole physique change, their whole attitude. They're not even the same person after, 6 months or a year, So
Hmm.
I would say listen to your body. If you're starting as you get older, you're not as young as you used to be, and you're not there to prove anything. You're there to learn. And then the other thing I would say is get the inflammation under control and get yourself into some kind of movement regimen.
I was going to ask you about this. I've heard you mention movement before becoming a really important part of your lifestyle. Can you touch on that too?
Yeah. Well, so I've had my share of injuries. I got hurt pretty bad with my back to where I couldn't even walk. I was literally bedridden for 2 months. Not sure. I couldn't even make it to my car. The only way I was gonna get to the hospital is if I called and did the ambulance ride. So
Oh
I'm
man.
I'm stubborn, bro. Like I had like multiple appointments. Like, all right, I'm gonna try. And bro, I could make it to the front of the garage, to get in the garage. I'd have to sit
Man.
down. I'm like, I can't do it. Back to bed, back to bed. And I had one of my black belts. He's an acupuncture. I was like, hey, come work on me. Nothing was working. Nothing was working. Massage, nothing. I'm like, fuck. The guy who was helping me run my gym bailed on me. Like I'm fucked. I'm like,
That's awful.
it's always the guys who need the most from you, who need constant reassurance from you, or whatever. And as soon as it doesn't fit their fucking narrative, dude.
Roadrunner. It's just smoke
Yeah,
there. Poof.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay, it's like that, huh? Well, good thing I'm tough. Good thing I will get through this. But I was really concerned. Like I'm thinking, like, man, I'm gonna have to get surgery. I gotta get to the hospital. Like I had to eat laying down. I went from a solid 180 pounds. I was like, I've been working out for a long time. I got back with my strength coach, Landos. I started, I hired a professional coach. So I'm like training serious because I was coaching MMA fighters at the time. So I want to make sure that my body was good so I could actually work with them, feel what's happening, and train a little bit with them. Because I feel
Mhm.
like me being able to train with someone, I could teach them a whole lot more than just words. Like I roll with my students for that reason. I save my roles with my students for that reason because they can learn a lot just from training with me. So I'm like, fuck, how am I going to do this job? So I was like 180 pounds. And within 2 months, I went down to 145 pounds
Holy smokes.
because I couldn't eat well. I could barely like get to the bathroom. Like I would say it was probably like 150, whatever it was low. It was low. The only time I was that low before, yeah, when I was going through a divorce in 2020, that's the only time I ever got that low. But I was even lower because like I was bedridden. And I was like, this is how you fucking die. This is how you die. You stop moving and you fucking deteriorate. I was scared, man, that I looked up at the ceiling. I know every pattern in my ceiling now. I watched everything on Netflix. It was terrible. I had a system, but it was brutal. And let me tell you,
Wow.
the event of my life was going to the bathroom because I knew it was going to be the most painful experience just walking and trying to get there. It was terrible. And my dad had to help me out. I had people out to help me out, man. It was fucked.
That's insane. Not saying that this is you, but people don't understand unless they've had it sounds super wimpy. If you have a little nerve impingement or something, man, it can stop you, man. I've been on the floor of my kitchen where, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I can't get up, man. I'm stuck here. Like I'm gonna have to call an ambulance or something. This is ridiculous.
Out of pain, right? What the hell? Like, bro, it got to a point I was basically experiencing sleep deprivation or deprivation or whatever because like it got to the point where I couldn't sit still. I had to bounce my leg 24/7 for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I would fall asleep 15 minutes, wake up screaming. Bro, I was like, damn, this is ridiculous. And I surrendered to it. I stopped trying to oppress it. I said, you know what? I don't know how long this is going to take. The guy who was just kind of helping me out at the gym bailed. Everything was gone. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And at that moment, that's when I just said, I surrender to this. And then I just, it started back with my faith for sure. Like I surrendered, and I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be, but if I get better, I'm going to do things differently. And I actually started my I started taking my supplements again, even though I wasn't able to work out. I started like thinking like an athlete again. I started thinking like I was, preparing for something, and I remember one day I woke up, I said, I'm getting better. And I started walking, I started, everything was kind of messy in my house too, the person I was with at the time, and the people who were there with me, they weren't taking care of my home. So I was a little upset, about that. And, I did have someone who was looking out for me when I was injured, but it wasn't really like, it was like kind of like more like person did because like out of necessity, not because they really cared, is what it felt like. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that's what it was, but that's how I interpreted it. And so when I
Hmm.
came in, I finally got out of bed and I walked and I looked at the condition of my home and all the things that were important to me. I just lost it. And then I went, you know what? This ain't happening again. And so my life changed. I wasn't going to attend this seminar where Cameron Shane was coming in, and it was going to be Budokan. It was going to be the mobility work. And my friend Rodrigo, I told him I would be there. He said, "You got to come. You got to come." And my friend Rodrigo was like, he was there to like help me. He checked on me with my back. He owns a school. He's a six blades. He's a 6th degree black belt with the six blades.
Hmm.
Really good friend of mine. We trained together a bunch. He was looking out for me, and I wasn't going to do the seminar. He said, no, you got to come. You got to come. That seminar I went to, I started seeing the movements, and there was something that I was doing prior to my injury that I picked up, training fighters, as I started, going from like a butterfly kind of guard to a sideways guard where I was putting feet on the hips and I would play more sideways. And it allowed me to
Hmm.
support more weight without like taxing me. It was a better frame. It just worked better. And so I was
Hmm.
already doing that before I got hurt. And so when I saw that there was a part of the movements in the spiral where you're doing that forward step and you're in that configuration, that really interests me.
Hmm.
So I started actually doing the movements and I could feel by this time I was starting to come back. I had not trained yet. All I was doing was teach a class, but I was able to move. And when I felt what the spiral A did to it was one of the movements is called spiral A. What I felt what it did to that injury, where the injury was, I was like, okay, that didn't hurt. I noticed it. I could feel it, but that actually felt like it was helpful. And so I did the seminar and I went to work on those movements just because I could see that they were better for jujitsu. Like they were intuitive. They actually supported everything we do in jujitsu. There was a movement that supported anything you could do in jujitsu. There's something in Budokan that's going to allow you to have more precision in movement because nobody's on top of you. It's you against you in the mat. Whereas, like when you're training, it's hard to develop that precision when you have you against you and the mat and another person trying to kill you. right? Or just trying to be the best uki. Sometimes they're not good ukis. It's very hard to be an uki is a skill, that is learned and developed. But when I saw that, I was like, man, this is great. And I've been doing it religiously. I mean, I put it on my sign. My sign fell down, the wind blew it off. And I was like, the wind blew it off my sign. And I was like, well, I'm not putting the same sign up. I got to change it. So I had to, instead of Katharo Training Center, Jiu-Jitsu and Fitness, it says Katharo Training Center, Jiu-Jitsu and Budokan Mobility. And you know what's funny? Like I tell people about this mobility work and they think it's going to be something lame. They're like, or something. I don't know what it is. They think mobility is not cool. It's not like that. It's Budokan Jiu-Jitsu is what it really is. It's the language of Jiu-Jitsu. Like I teach from it. All my kids can do, like our whole warm up is Budokan, right? My kids move better. I can coach them from this terminology. My adult students move better. My adult students who are moving like stiff, like tin men, could barely squat, barely move. Man, they're out there like graceful all over, squatting down, deep squats, a good, we call it the samurai crawl, samurai walk. Man, they can do all that. And they couldn't do it in the beginning. So and another thing too, is it helped my business because there's people that get injured. And rather than put their account on hold, I have a whole recoveries protocol for them with my fitness center in the back, the vibration plates that I have, and then the Budokan mobility, and then I have a good deal with the red light therapy next to our academy. So I've got a great recovery way for people. But not only that, I was getting people that don't even want to do jujitsu to come in just to do the mobility work. People who are injured, coming in just to do the mobility work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow, fascinating.
yeah, and some of these people cross over and they say, you know what, I actually want to learn jujitsu. So I think you teach people how to move better, you're going to have better athletes. Here's the thing about Budokan. Wrestlers, if they're a high level wrestler, they usually do well in jujitsu because think about how much of wrestling practice as a kid is all tumbling. It's all these dynamic movements, all these they have so much athleticism. I was a wrestler. Where'd it come from? Wrestling. Wrestling teaches athleticism, right? Better than anything else for combat arts, in my opinion. But unless someone does that at an early age, doing that at an older age is probably not, you're not going to see the same, right? Usually wrestlers who wrestle, they wrestled as a kid when they're older. If they're wrestled as an older person, they wrestled as a kid. How many brand new wrestlers you see in their 30s or 40s? Never wrestled before to go, hey, let me sign up for wrestling. No, it doesn't happen. Not usually. And so you don't have normally what you have in the jiu-jitsu setting is you got a bunch of warm-ups that don't make any fucking sense. I'm not doing jumping jacks anywhere in the game. If anything, maybe a push-up, maybe a sit-up, but it's not going to be like that. So like everything that we do, I mean, I still have my guys do a little bit of running and spinning and stuff like because I think it's good to have that balance. Keep it pliable, keep everything moving, and then we go into our spirals, and then we go into our crawling patterns and everything. Most of the jiu-jitsu warm-ups that we were brought into are stupid and dumb, and they're not specific to the nature of what we're doing. Whereas a spiral makes sense because you're going to use that all the time when you're playing guard and going from your butt or your back to your belly, right? You're going to use that. You're going to learn, you're going to do the long step because you're going to go from a seated position to a upright lunge position, knee cut type of position, right? Combat stance or whatever they call it. So all these movements made way more sense. And so I would say most people don't do warm ups. And I know I was like that where I would just go in, I would be like, hey, first round, let's flow. Boom, hands go. All right, second round, let's flow a little less. By the third round, we're fighting, right? So, but like with Budokan, I can't do that now anymore either. I don't think it's a good idea. For me, I don't want to do regular warm ups, but I love doing the Budokan because it gets me ready to move the way I want to move in training. All those movements are pre-programmed in and they're refreshed like a person running plays before the game, And so, better mover, better jujitsu, hands down. So become a mover. And so the way that I train now is I have a few days a week where I go, pretty decent, not as hard as I can. I don't ever go as hard as I can usually unless someone brings it out of me, and then I need to recover because that shit's not fun. I'm not competing anymore. So I definitely don't have that. Like, I'm not doing any road work. I'm not running. I'm not hiking up a bunch of fucking mountains. I'm like, my jujitsu is pretty good. I stay pretty fit. I can make this work. I can survive. I know how to be lazy. I know how to
Hmm.
camp, so I can manage
Yeah.
that. But I train more like a gymnast than than I did as a competitor when I was in my 20s. I don't hit the weights like
Yes.
I used to. I'm not doing like powerlifting. I'm not doing football lifts anymore. I'm
Hmm.
doing sport specific lifts, and I'm doing the stuff that I do at Landau's is more like what the UFC fighters that they train do, all the combat athletes do. I do that 1 day a week. I do Budokan every day. I'm on the mat, 5 days a week. That's how I maintain it.
What's the biggest lie people believe about jujitsu right now?
Oh, that's the easy shit. Oh, well, the biggest lie, all time lie, or all right, biggest lie about jujitsu
Or it could
now.
be plural.
We'll do both. We'll do both. The biggest lie about jujitsu now is that jujitsu is not effective. I see a lot of people on social media saying that like jujitsu is not the one anymore. Wrestling, boxing, and I have to agree with it based on the condition of what I see jujitsu is, because most people again have forgotten what the hell it's designed for. It was designed for combat, y'all, right? So start putting on the gloves and smack each other around, or just put some strike awareness. Just see if you can touch their face. I guarantee you do a drill like this in the guard, your guard's going to be way better. You'll get way more triangles. You'll start hitting the omoplatas. You'll start using the Williams guard or shoulder pin guard. You'll start controlling posture way better, and you'll be protecting your face. See, the thing that Helson always used to say to us, nobody can touch my face. Try to hit my face, Steve. Nobody can. Like that was his thing. And so, like, that one aspect right there, that changes it. Because though, if you start on that, where are you going to play? You're going to play in the zone where like in that middle zone where it's just going to happen the whole time and going to get smacked. No, you're either going to be really low or you're going to have good posture, good head position. You're going to have your hands up, fencing, and you're going to be doing things, right? And I'm talking about more
Mm.
like, let's say, in the guard. If I'm in the guard, I'm either going to be low or I'm going to be fencing. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be intercepting grips and waiting for an opportunity to pass or open the guard and pass, right? But most people ain't thinking like that. So I would say that jujitsu, that is the biggest lie that I have to agree with now, because I don't, to me, that's not jujitsu. So I honestly don't feel like I fit in anymore in the jujitsu community, because my mindset is more like a catch wrestler, because I
Right.
coached MMA, so I'm thinking catch wrestling and grappling and MMA seems like more like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to me now.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So that's what I would say. But then the all time greatest lie about jujitsu is it's all technique. Plus strength. Strength doesn't
Mm.
matter. That's bullshit. Why are we doing all this strength and conditioning? Why are we getting strong? Why are people on gear? Why are they doing that if strength doesn't matter? And I always knew that was bullshit. Here's why. I would say I'm not the smartest guy, but I'm pretty good at figuring things out. I would say this: end of the lever, put as much force on the end of end of this lever, as much force as I can. Nothing wrong with that. That's good.
Yeah. I always like what the Gracies say about like every 10 years and 20 pounds is about color.
I mean, I agree with that. Here's how my mind works. I'm not buying it. I'm not going to let that happen, bro. I will figure out how
I know you're
to.
going to think your way out of it. I know you. I know. I know.
Hey, I think it's a grip fight. Here's why. Grandmaster did it to me when he was 86 years old, and it was very impressive. I was like, damn,
Hmm.
no grip, no fight. But yeah, no, that's I do agree with that though. From what I've seen, that I would say that's pretty accurate. I'm just not going to subscribe to it. I'm going to fight that as long as I can. Personally, I'm personally going to fight it.
All right. Well, speaking of your beliefs, what's a belief you had, let's say, I don't know, 15 years ago or more that you've completely changed your mind about?
Man, I was just thinking about this the other day too. Here's one that changed. See, when I first got out of the Navy, I wasn't doing jujitsu really. I was trying to like get my self established, find a job, find a career, and I worked some different jobs. I worked a sales job, and I wasn't teaching jujitsu, and I wasn't training really at all. I was the one time in my life where I took a kind of an extended break. I think I took a break for about a year because I was trying to get my feet underneath me, and after making that transition out of the service and coming back to Colorado. So I would say that I got pulled in. The reason why I became a teacher is because I got pulled into MMA. I was working a sales job, and one of the guys who worked at the place we would go and eat, he was an up and coming MMA fighter. And he saw that
Wow.
he saw I had cauliflower ears, and he said, "Hey, do you wrestle?" I was like, "No, I train jujitsu." He told me who he was. I'm an MMA fighter, and I'm going to. I want to be pro. Would you help me with my jujitsu? His name is Justin. He's still around. Justin Salas. He's a good friend of mine. He did actually make it to the UFC. Did everything he said he was going to do. Now he coaches guys. He coaches people that are in the UFC. He's a very good wrestler, very good boxing. He was a savage, man. I loved working with him. But he was the reason why I started doing it again. And he brought me into the MMA game straight up, but I thought that MMA back then was like, it was not very appealing to me because it wasn't very technical. You know what I mean? It
Hmm.
was it was just like very much wrestling and punching. It didn't appeal to me. And then when I got asked to get back into the game in 2020, 2021, I think it was. Chris Camozzi, a good friend of mine. We've worked together off and on for years. He was out of Factory X at the time. He didn't have a coach at the time, so he asked me if I would help him with that and be his coach for PFL. And I hadn't done any of it. I don't like to travel much, and he knew that. But he asked me, and I was like, "Shoot, my life just fell apart. Why not? What else I got to lose?" I was like, hey, I divorced, rebuild my academy. I was like, well, maybe this will be good. Maybe this will be fun. I'll be doing it at PFL, which was a big event. And, maybe it'll be a way for me to kind of rebuild myself. So I came up with the slogan, and I made t-shirts. I made rash guards, making jujitsu violent again. That was my thing. So I went into MMA and I made jiu-jitsu violent. And that's what I made. I try to make my fighters as violently as possible. I try to give them the tools to be an anti-jiu-jitsu, and I developed a few programs from there that I still teach to this day. That I would say, if I was going to train an MMA fighter, I'd run you through 3 programs, and you would be an anti-jiu-jitsu. You'd be a problem. And so I've been doing that with a lot of the fighters, and that was fun. I noticed that the game had now evolved into something that was technical, and there were systems, and there were things that worked. Over the years of me taking that little break, it actually became very, very technical, and that appealed to me.
Hmm.
And then when I got on the mat and I started rolling with these guys, and they kept standing up on me, I was like, okay, got to hold you down. Okay, we need to change that. That's the
Hmm.
first thing I noticed, is that jujitsu people like to stay on the ground, so you don't have to worry about that. If all you do is do jujitsu and you
Hmm.
don't go against wrestlers or MMA guys, or you're not doing that, the first time you use it live, the person's going to stand up on you. And if you don't know how to hold someone down and work your jujitsu and stop punches, stopping punches just builds that much more awareness. And
Hmm.
I think awareness, if you could max out awareness on when you're moving and training, and know exactly where your limbs are and where their limbs are and where they might actually move them, and because you start picking up the patterns, I think you need to expose yourself to all those things. And for me, it was like very, very important. I mean, these guys were standing up on me. So then I was like, I got to keep them in the pressure zone, keep them in that kill zone with that 45-degree off of that point of contact with them. 45 degrees, I stay there, and I cook people there with the tight waist wrap. I don't pass until I know that they are starting to feel the pressure. They are starting to
Hmm.
get uncomfortable. Then I pass. So patience. I didn't have patience back then. So MMA became technical to me. And that was something that 15 years ago I did not, but not even 15 years ago, but yeah, 15 years ago, I didn't think it was very technical. That's why I never really got into it. I was more about the science of the jujitsu, seeing these things work, seeing that there was a high percentage of this to work every time like this, that really interests me. So that would be
Hmm.
probably one of the biggest changes. And then here's another one that's really good. This is how I approach things now. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time. Anytime I start class, I wouldn't say I trick myself, but I hold myself to this mindset that I don't know anything. I don't know is the first thing I say when someone asks a question or when I start a class. I don't know if this is what we're going to do here. Like, so it says, hey, do this. I don't know. Let me see what you're doing.
Mhm.
Because if I come at something like I know it, learning doesn't happen. I'm not exploring anything. If I'm like, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. Are you
Mhm.
actually looking? You're like, no, I already know how to do that. I don't need to look. But if you come out with something like, I don't know, you're going to look at it different. And every time you look at it, you're going to look at it with leveled up eyes. Think about this. I have a 27 lesson rotating curriculum. Every time I go through that curriculum, I have leveled up so much because
Mhm.
I teach it, right? And so I see something new every time, even though it's the same stuff I've been teaching for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And so I come at everything I don't know because I don't know is the only way you start actually learning and growing and exploring and saying, what if I do this? I started playing inside of these areas in the game, which I would call the transitions, the not normal places, the gray area of jujitsu.
Mhm.
I expose my back. People are like, "Don't give your back on someone good." I was like, "Well, I'm gonna give my back on everybody and see if they can
Mhm.
do it because I'm pretty good too. I'm
Mhm.
pretty confident in my defenses. I don't know if I could beat you, but I don't know if you could beat me. I don't think you could beat me. You know what I mean?"
Mhm.
I got that. That's what Grandmaster used to say. He used to say, like, I don't know if I could beat them, but I don't think they can beat me. Confidence in your defense, right? And so I expose my back. Why? Fighters get hit in the face. They turn their back every time. What am I going to tell them? Don't save your face. Stop giving your back. Take the punch in your face like a man or a woman, because the women are in there too. But like, like take the punch in the face. Don't turn your back. No bullshit. You're gonna turn every time. You know how frustrating that would be if I was trying to be a coach that was like saying, "Don't do that." No, they
Mhm.
started doing it. So what I started doing is I started showing them how to do it, how to protect and buy time so that they could do the things they could do. Because here's what I noticed: when I showed them that, I couldn't keep their back. I couldn't hold their back. And these were guys that were like blue, purple, brown belts, very few black belts, but because MMA is like, you got these guys that have been blue belt for like 15 years, so yeah, so they may not be a blue belt or ranked, but they have a high grappling IQ. You
Oh
show
yeah.
them this, they can stand up every time. You can't hold them
Mhm.
down. So I would say that having the mindset of coming from zero, I don't know, that's how I learn now. That's how I teach now. And guess what? I get just as much from the class as my students every single time. You know what I mean? Like I'm learning with them. We learn together. We're growing together. And it's more inclusive too, because it's not just me saying, do this XYZ, step 1, 2, 3. No, I'm saying, here's what we're going to work on. I have an idea. That's a good question. I don't know. Let me look at it. Okay, let's try this. Let's play with this idea. This is why I would do this because in the past I've done this. I'll explain this. I'll tell them the story of it and why I'm doing it this way and kind of give them like a best case. And then we go into and we just run the timer and we have them work with that idea for like 3 minutes. So I don't say we do the ecological approach because like I don't like when people rebrand something that's been around from the beginning. This is how we fucking trained in Hawaii. What if? Add resistance, dynamic drilling. Nothing against the guy. All right. It's dynamic drilling. And I'm sure he's a good guy, but I'm not subscribing to that. I don't like when people rebrand something. It's like when that guy Tai Bo came around, shadow boxing, Tai Bo. I mean, what the hell, bro? Nothing against it, but like that's kind of what that reminds me of.
So, what do black belts do you feel need to unlearn?
Everything. Everything, man. Because if you unlearn everything, you start again. You think about this: new eyes, fresh eyes with experience that you're pulling from a whole foundation of years and years and years and years and years of jujitsu and drilling and experiences. And you come at it and you say, "I'm going to relearn everything. I'm going to start. I'm going to dump it all." I would, and I started doing this in my competition times when I was competing because I competed from I think 2009 was my last competition. And then I went full time teacher in my school, running a business. Had to learn to become an entrepreneur. No, I don't say entrepreneur. Had to learn to become a business. Being an entrepreneur, I was broke. I'm still broke. I'm still learning. I invest my money back in and I'm like, "Boop, all right, I got some money. Throw it back in the business. Let's see if we can make it
Mhm.
bigger. Let's see if we can make it better." So I had to learn how to do all that stuff. So like it took a lot of time. So the competition was done for me. I had to
Mhm.
learn how to speak better. I had to learn how to lead. I had to learn how to run a business. I had to learn, basic things that you need. And then of course, me being a guy who was kind of a perfectionist, I said, well, I want to do it and I want it to look just like this. I do a lot of meditation, a lot of meditation. And so I'll do a lot of, study, reading, listen to gurus. And I heard this and I thought, man, so powerful. The biggest number that you can think of, right? Whatever it is, how many billions, trillions, whatever, as biggest number you can think of is nothing without zero. Zero gives everything its value. And so I said, I'm gonna bring myself back to zero every time. And so when I would compete, what I was saying, when I would compete, I started doing this as a competitor. No matter if I win or I would win or I would lose, draw, whatever it would happen in the tournament, I would mentally imagine myself like I thought of jujitsu like a Rubik's Cube for some reason. Like all my jujitsu was just perfectly ready for competition. All the sides were lined up. And at the end of the competition, I would throw it on the ground and break it into a million pieces. And then I would put it back together. Right. And that's how I imagined my game. And you know what? And I would level up so much from competition. See, I never really competed to be a champion, although I did win a lot. I did win a lot of medals. I won some belts, like I beat some very tough guys, in competition. But that wasn't why I was doing it. I was doing it to make sure that jujitsu worked, that it was effective, you know? So like for me, it was always experimenting, always tweaking, always a science experiment called jujitsu that became my life.
Well, Steve, where can we get more information about you and everything that you're up to, man?
Yeah, just get me on Instagram. Everything there, all my BJJ fanatics, my online platform, Jiu-Jitsu on the Go, my men's group, mental health stuff is something I'm really big about. It's all on Instagram. So if you find me on Instagram, you can find everything that I'm into. Steve Hordinski, one word.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the conversation. Thanks again, everyone. I'm your host, Adolfo Ferranda. Don't forget to give us the like and subscribe, and check us out on all the socials. All the show notes will be available later for you guys. Buy our merch at fwb.printful.me, I believe is the URL. And buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee/Forever White Belt. So thanks everyone for your time. We'll see you guys next time. Steve, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, brother.